Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into the world of Ishikawa Jun. He's a really fascinating figure in Japanese literature, often described as an outsider. Yet his influence on modern prose and critical thought was, well, incredibly profound and quite challenging in many ways.
Definitely provocative.
So our mission today is to unpack excerpts from a really insightful analysis of Ishikawa Jun, early fiction and criticism. We'll be focusing on 7 of his pivotal works from 1935 to 1943.
That key early period.
Exactly. We want to help you grasp his radical critique of literary conventions, his, truly distinctive narrative voice, and maybe his surprising theories of writing and value. So you can really understand how he fundamentally challenged the very foundations of what literature could even be.
That's right. And the source material for our exploration, it comes from a deep study of Ishikawa's early fiction, specifically thinking about The Fair One, The Wild Cherry Tree, and The Song of Mars. And we'll also be dissecting his really powerful literary criticism. Things like form and content in writing, what constitutes a Tampen Shōsetsu, prayer, Norito, and prose, and on the thought patterns of the people of Edo.
Wow.
It's a rich tapestry of thought, really. Stuff that redefined his era.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Starting right at the beginning, Ishikawa's literary debut, his work, The Fair One, or Kajin.
Kajin.
It was published in May 1935 in the literary journal Sakuhin. Now, he'd had other things out before, right? Some fictional etudes, translations, essays.
Bits and pieces.
But Kojin is what Japanese critics widely see as his true literary breakthrough, and it definitely made an immediate splash.
Oh, absolutely.
The celebrated novelist Makino Shinichi, he praised it right away, which, quickly put Ishikawa on the literary establishment's radar.
A big endorsement early on.
And just 2 years later, he won the prestigious Akutagawa Prize for his first full-length novel, Fugen, or The Bodhisattva, which came out in 1936. So, from the get-go, he was making waves.
Definitely. And what's truly fascinating about Kajin is how it functions. It's both an I-novel, that dominant form of autobiographical realism in Japanese language.
Right, the personal story.
Exactly. But it's also, simultaneously, a parody of one. It kind of dismantles that whole idea of autobiographical realism.
Yep.
Our source says it does this through the conspicuous use of 4 types of literary mediation: deep, surface, reflexive, and figural.
Okay, 4 types of literary mediation. Can you break that down a bit? What does that actually look like in the story?
Sure. Think of them as like different layers or lenses that intentionally filter or distort reality. A deep lens might say, obscure the author, make it hard to pin down the real person behind the narrator.
Okay.
While a reflexive lens makes the story where it's a story, it keeps reminding you, hey, this is constructed. This isn't just a clear window into life.
So it's not just telling a story. It's actively pointing out that it's a story. Very meta.
Precisely. The first-person narrator here is described as a kind of mimetic and analog parody.
Meta.
Yeah, it's not just a simple spoof. It's more sophisticated, like reframing or reinterpreting something well-known in a new, often ironic context.
Yeah.
Here, he's a mimetic of these eccentric neo-Taoist poets from ancient China, like Ruanji.
Ruanji, right. Known for being unconventional.
Exactly. This narrator, he desperately longs to escape his kind of insular world, wants to immerse himself in something external, and that's represented by the central metaphor, the fair one, the kajin.
The object of desire.
Right. But despite his repeated attempts, which are often humiliating, frankly, he's constantly rebuffed. He ends up reduced to feeling like a wild beast. And the story leaves him trapped by Pan, the Greek demigod. Pan has essentially taken possession of him, representing this irrepressible, almost primitive drive.
Okay, Pan, like overwhelming nature or instinct.
Sort of, yeah. An uncontrollable force within. And the brilliant irony is that his very inability to overcome Pan, his failure to escape these internal struggles, that is precisely what enables him to write the work we're reading. So this established a characteristic narrative structure you see in Ishikawa's early fiction. You've got this unnamed, struggling artist narrator. He's seeking some alternative world through art, but he gets thwarted by an interloping force. Could be acute self-consciousness, could be irrepressible sexual drive, like with Pan here.
Right.
And that force then, ironically, becomes the primary focus of the work itself.
So he's almost like Sisyphus, but instead of a boulder, he's stuck with his own inescapable self-consciousness, or this drive. That's a pretty bleak yet fertile ground for literature.
Definitely fertile.
Did this idea of the struggling artist thwarted by an internal force become a kind of hallmark of his early work, maybe in The Wild Cherry Tree?
Absolutely, it became a clear pattern. If we fast forward just a little bit, we get The Wild Cherry Tree, Yamasakura, published January 1st, 1936.
Right after Kojin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one also features a first-person artist narrator, a painter this time, and he's similarly possessed by a force beyond his control.
Okay, another one.
But there's a key contrast with Kojin. While Kojin's narrator seems possessed by an external entity, like Pan, the narrator in Yamasakura is haunted by something internal, a repressed memory. Specifically, an ill-fated affair with a woman named Kiko 12 years earlier.
Ah, the past coming back.
Exactly. From the very start, he seems to be hurtling toward this predetermined destination. Turns out it's Kiko's villa. He intends to, reenact his unresolved trauma, maybe make a discovery, try to retrieve that lost object of desire.
A quest into memory.
Right. And what's left wonderfully ambiguous is whether the events that unfold after his encounter with the titular wild cherry tree are, a hallucination, or if they're actual experiences.
Ah, blurring the lines.
Definitely. And just like in Kojin, you can certainly see how those 4 types of literary mediation are once again skillfully at play, really blurring what's real versus what's perceived.
Still playing with form.
Still playing with form. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, these early fictional works really highlight Ishikawa's early and remarkably consistent critique of shajitsu-shugi.
Shajitsu-shugi, that's the mimetic or autobiographical realism you mentioned.
Exactly. This shajitsu-shugi was practically the bedrock of modern Japanese literature at the time. The idea that writing should mirror reality, often through these personal autobiographical narratives, Ishikawa saw this as, stifling, limiting what literature could truly achieve.
He wanted more.
He wanted more. And this raises an important question. What exactly was he trying to achieve by actively subverting these established norms right from his very debut? He was clearly starting an intellectual battle against the status quo.
Yeah, he wasn't easing into it. And he certainly didn't stop with fiction. Ishikawa went on to produce a significant body of literary criticism where he could more directly articulate these revolutionary ideas.
His critical essays are key.
Let's start with form and content in writing. Bunshu no Kashiki Tanayu. Published in May 1940, our source calls this an incisive theory of writing and a clear salvo in Ishikawa's broader project against that shujitsu-shugi. He was really coming out swinging here.
He absolutely was.
Yeah.
In this essay, Ishikawa presents his theory in 3 distinct modes, descriptive, prescriptive, where he outlines what he calls purified prose, and then a theory of aesthetic value.
Right.
He starts by outlining 4 general conditions for all writing. Its materiality, the physical words on the page, its autonomy from speech, writing isn't just recorded talking, its rootedness in history and culture, and its public orientation.
Foundational stuff.
Right. Then he details 4 factors that he believes corrupt this idea of purified prose. One is conflating writing with speech. Another is relying on what he calls stylized conventions, or kata.
Kata, like forms or molds.
Exactly. Think of them as formulaic patterns that can stifle creativity. Then there's overdeveloping technique, getting too caught up in craft for its own sake. And finally, retaining poetic residue.
Poetic residue. What exactly did he mean by that? Is it just overly flowery language?
Good question. It's a bit more than that. He saw poetry as having its own distinct mode, often focused on emotion or subjective experience. For prose to be purified, he believed it needed to shed this poetic residue and focus purely on its own unique capabilities.
So prose defining itself on its own terms.
Precisely. Separate from other forms. And interestingly, he explicitly rejects genbun ichi, the modern vernacular style of writing that tried to unify spoken and written language.
He rejected the common style. Why?
He argued it was too close to everyday speech and thus couldn't achieve this true purified prose he was aiming for. It lacked the necessary distance, the necessary autonomy.
Okay, so he wanted something more distinct, more crafted in a specific way.
Right. And his critical genius truly shines in how he tackled that old, kind of tired debate about form or style, keishiki, versus content, nayu.
Ah, yes, the form versus content debate. Does it ever end?
Maybe not. But Ishikawa basically said, why not both? But in a way that's completely new. He actually fused them into this new category he called unconscious content, or Ishiki Sarzorunayu.
Unconscious content, that sounds deep.
It is. Think of it like this. Ishikawa argued that a text's real power, its true beauty, isn't just in what the author intends it to say explicitly.
Okay.
It's in the deeper, almost mysterious meaning that bubbles up directly from the words themselves. Like the language gains its own momentum, its own life, creating meaning beyond the surface representation.
So the words themselves generate meaning, almost simultaneously.
Kind of, yeah. This unconscious content allows a text to be both representational, it shows you something about the world, and self-reflexive. It's aware it's a piece of writing.
Got it.
It becomes both heteronymous, meaning it's influenced by external reality, and autonomous, meaning it also exists purely on its own terms, independent of just mirroring that reality. It's like the writing achieves its own independent life force.
So he wasn't just saying writing was autonomous, he was proposing a whole new way to experience its creation, a kind of spontaneous meaning emerging beyond the author's direct control. That's a truly radical shift in perspective for that time.
Absolutely, a major shift. Okay, moving on. We have what constitutes a Tampen Shōsetsu, or Tampen Shōsetsu no Seis.
Right.
This is apparently Ishikawa's most often cited essay of literary criticism. And despite its title, which sounds like it's about short stories, it serves as an implicit theory of the Shōsetsu itself.
And shujitsu, that's often translated as novel, but you said it's broader.
Yeah, it's better described maybe as a piece of fictional narrative. It's a bit more flexible than our category of novel.
Okay.
Now, Ishikawa uses Tampen Shōsetsu, which usually does mean short story in a very idiosyncratic way. He uses it to refer to most modern Japanese fiction.
So he lumps most things under short story.
Kind of, yeah. And then he categorized this broad group into two main types. The kante, like those by the famous Akutagawa Ryunosuke, known for his psychological short stories, and the nouvelle, which he dismissed rather harshly as false or botched shōsetsu.
Ouch. So he didn't think much of the nouvelle form.
Not in his framework, no. And here's the crucial point. Ishikawa regarded both the kante and the nouvelle as fundamentally antithetical to his own unique notion of the true shōsetsu.
The true one. What was that then?
Well, that's the thing. This true shōsetsu exists entirely outside the genealogy of literature, bungaku, and art, taijutsu. It defies direct definition, defies easy theorization, and is, in his view, extremely rare. It was his ultimate, almost unattainable ideal for fiction.
Wow. So it's this pure, almost mystical form he's chasing.
Exactly. And his philosophy here also drew from figures like André Gide, the French modernist. Gilles Récits explored psychological complexity and self-reflexivity in ways that resonated with Ishikawa, who had actually translated some of Gide's work.
Ah, the Gide connection.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is just how uncompromising he was in this vision. He had this very specific, very high bar for what true literature should be.
He certainly sounds uncompromising. Okay, let's shift gears slightly to Prayer, Norito, and Prose, or Kito to Norito to Sanbun. This was published in May 1942, so deep into World War II. And it's noted for the conspicuous absence of the anti-war tone that was apparently quite strong in his earlier work, like The Song of Mars. That seems like a significant change.
It is a notable shift, yeah.
Yeah.
This essay unfolds in a kind of meandering, almost documentary style. It explores various subjects loosely connected by the terms in its title. Christian prayers, Shinto Norito, those are ancient ritual chants.
Norito.
Japanese prose. He touches on figures like the French poet Charles Péguy, the Gothic writer Izumi Kishka. He discusses mimetic notions of writing, again, based on the everyday life diagram and psychological diagram, basically reinforcing why just trying to copy reality wasn't enough for him.
Still hammering that point home.
Always. He also delves into naturalism's failures, the importance of Nagai Kafu, even citing Kafu's House for a Mistress as the genesis of the modern Japanese shōsetsu. He talks about the ancient chronicle, the Kojiki.
A wide range of topics.
Very wide-ranging. However, there's a problematic aspect here, which, our source material highlights, and it's important to understand within the context of wartime Japan. Ishikawa describes Shinto as a timeless, unchanging force.
Okay.
Now, we need to be clear. In the modern period, Shinto was deliberately recast by the state as state Shinto, or koka Shinto. This was essentially a quasi-religious imperial ideology used by the government to bolster state power and nationalism.
Right, a tool of the state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So by extolling state Shinto in this way, and conversely degrading foreign religions like Christianity and Buddhism within the essay, Ishikawa's work, in this specific instance, unfortunately echo the nationalistic narratives that were prevalent at the time.
Okay, so that's an important context.
It is, and our source points this out clearly just to convey the ideas in the original text without endorsing that specific viewpoint.
Yeah.
It's also worth noting, though, that the second section of the same essay is largely a critique of the mimetic conception of literature.
Back to his main target.
Exactly. That remained a primary target in pretty much all of Ishikawa's early works.
Okay. And finally, we arrive at On the Thought Patterns of the People of Edo, or Edojin no Hasushi ni Suite. This was published in March 1943, still during the war. And this essay is now considered a real classic of modern Japanese literary criticism.
Yeah, it's held in very high regard now. Despite its explicit subject, which is the thought patterns or the literary hermeneutic paradigm of the Edo period, pre-modern Japan,
Right.
the essay is actually an incisive, if oblique, attack on what Ishikawa still saw as the dominant paradigm of modern Japanese literature, that old foe, shajitsu-shugi, both its expressive emotive side and its descriptive mimetic side.
Attacking the present through the past.
Precisely. He brilliantly invoked these largely forgotten Edo period literary techniques as clear alternatives to shajitsu-shugi. He talks about the 5 conversion devices of Haikai transformation. These were techniques that played with perception and meaning in really clever ways.
Okay, what were these devices?
They include mimetic, that analog parody we talked about earlier, zokuka, which is popularization, kind of bringing high culture down to earth, yatsushi, or lowly disguise, hankadori, which is a elusive variation based on classic native Japanese waka poems, and hanshidori, a similar technique but using classical Chinese poems as the source.
Wow, a whole toolkit from the past. So he wasn't just observing history, he was actively pulling these tools out to sort of combat the present literary trends. That's a clever move.
Extremely clever. And importantly, he wasn't idealizing or romanticizing the Edo period itself. Not really. Instead, he depicted its literary culture in very positive terms, implicitly contrasting it with what he saw as a kind of disenchanted modern world.
Disenchanted how?
A world that had, in his view, lost the ability to understand things analogically, to see connections beyond the purely literal representation. So his detailed description of this past tradition isn't just history, it's essentially a coded critique of the present. It's showing there were other, perhaps richer, ways to approach art and meaning that had been forgotten or discarded.
A subtle but powerful intellectual maneuver, using history as a weapon against contemporary norms.
Exactly. A way to push for new literary forms by looking back.
What an insightful journey into the mind of Ishikawa Jun. To sort of bring it all together, we've really seen his consistent, multifaceted challenge to shajitsu-shugi. He attacked it from all angles.
Yeah, through both his innovative, sometimes playful fiction and his incisive, deeply intellectual criticism.
He was constantly searching for that elusive unconscious content, pushing for this radical definition of the true shōsetsu, this ideal form, and ingeniously leveraging historical literary techniques like those Edo ones to propose entirely new alternatives for modern writing. He wasn't just critiquing, he was offering paths forward.
He truly was a visionary in his field, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Always looking for what literature could be, rather than just settling for what it was expected to be.
Definitely. And this leads us, I think, to a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe ponder. How might rediscovering these, lost ways of thinking about art and literature, just as Ishikawa did with those Edo period techniques, how might that help us see our own contemporary cultural landscape and its dominant forms with fresh eyes?
Good question.
Could it perhaps even inspire new modes of expression, new ways of creating that go beyond our current conventions? Something to think about.